This is a presentation about the effects and consequences of climate change, looking specifically at the water crisis in Sao Paulo and how the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest has created this crisis. We will look at two essential issues. First, how the droughts brought on by changing rainfall patterns due to the deforestation of the Amazon is causing a major water crisis in Sao Paulo. And the second issue will be the impact of climate change and deforestation on the Amazon rainforest and on global warming. To summarize, we have a simple graph showing how climate change and global warming is changing the rainfall patterns in the Amazon forest, which is creating droughts, and this is creating the water crisis in Sao Paulo, which is also due to a lack of proper planning by the government and municipalities of the city. So, the drought in Sao Paulo and the water crisis that has stemmed from it. Why is there a drought in Sao Paulo? It is the worst drought in 80 years in spite of Brazil possessing 12% of the world's fresh water. Global warming and Amazonian deforestation could be altering the relationship between the rainforest and the climate in Brazil's ecosystem due to the absence of flying rivers, the vapor clouds from the Amazon that normally bring rain to the center and south of Brazil. Professor Antonio Nobre from the INPE and the INPA claims that the cutting of 19% of the forest is already having negative consequences, expanding the dry season as the forest is losing its ability to regulate the weather system. It is no longer about models, it is about observation, he says. Now, why is there a water crisis in Sao Paulo? Sao Paulo is Brazil's largest and wealthiest city with a growing population of 20 million people. The notion of abundance supported a culture of water wastefulness, such as car washing and sidewalks washed with drinking water. There's a lack of investment for more efficient use and protection of water resources and low value accorded to water. The unplanned urban growth, industrialization, and agricultural expansion. There's also no proper water tariffs, and up until 1999, no water fees were charged for its use for irrigation. There's also mismanagement of the water system, with less than 12% of the wastewater produced being treated. Open sewage flows into the rivers, causing water pollution and undermining health and quality of life. More than 30% of Sao Paulo's drinking water is lost to leaks in distribution networks and even to theft. And finally, there's also a lack of political will. Because of the elections and the unpopular topic of water shortage, the government has been slow in responding to the crisis. Today, its attention is again diverted by the vast corruption scandal engulfing the government and Petrobras. So what are the consequences of this water crisis? The main water reservoirs providing the city with drinking water are at 10% of their capacity and could run out by the end of 2015. Residents in some parts of the city are already experiencing water cuts for days on end, sometimes up to 15 consecutive days, and have to be supplied by water trucks. People are drilling their own unregulated wells to access groundwater, leading to the risk of polluting the underground supplies. People are also stocking up on water, keeping it in open containers, and exacerbating an already critical dengue problem. Businesses and services such as schools, restaurants, and hospitals are suffering because of water rationing, and some have had to close. Prices of produce in supermarkets have increased significantly, putting further strain on everyone, especially the poor strata of the population. And some people are leaving the city, becoming 21st century water refugees. Another problem is that 80% of the electricity is supplied by hydropower. The shortage of water is putting a big strain on the supply of energy. One can see a rising cost of electricity, the threat of electricity rationing and power cuts, which would hugely impact businesses and the economy, and could result in a 2% decrease of the GDP. So this water shortage, the rising costs, rising unemployment due to the decrease in GDP could lead to social unrest as people feel the government has let them down, and could finally lead to an increase in violent crime. So what can be done? Well, on an individual level, people need to appreciate the value of water. They need to take full accountability of their water usage by becoming more conscientious and changing their habits. They should put more pressure on their local representatives and demand a more efficient water distribution system, recycling, treatment and conservation plan, and infrastructure. Citizens should also help governments see how water scarcity underpins their energy and food security, and they should pressure their municipality and the government to address the problem and find long-term solutions so as to avoid future crises and keep water on the agenda of policy making. On a business level, businesses need to change their paradigms to become more resource efficient. Agribusinesses should invest in climate-smart agriculture to decrease the 70% of water used for irrigation, and the price of water should be incorporated into business practices so as to make them more conscious and more efficient. On a national and government level, municipalities need to prioritize their budget to deal with the water crisis and set up proper tariffs. They need to educate their citizens about proper consumption use and water-saving measures. The government must look beyond short-term objectives led by elections, implement proper long-term planning and management of their resources, making these into policies. It needs to invest in smart grids, tariff systems and distribution networks, all the while looking for more renewable energy options to decrease the dependence on hydroelectric power plants. The government needs to change its paradigms to find solutions and make policies work in a more integrated way by getting businesses, individuals, local municipalities and NGOs together. Finally, the government, businesses and individuals need to look at the bigger picture, prevent more droughts by curbing climate change, in this case caused by the deforestation of the Amazon forest. Although for the moment the government will not recognize this particular scenario of cause and effect. Now let's look at the deforestation and climate change. The reason we are looking at this is because this crisis in Sao Paulo is directly due to the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest. The Amazon rainforest is already experiencing the effect of climate change due to global warming, and as seen by longer dry periods leading to droughts and by devastating fires. These changing rainfall patterns are affecting South, Central, and parts of North America. So why is the deforestation of the Amazon occurring? The main causes for it are making room for cattle pasture, which accounts for 80% of the deforestation, large-scale agriculture such as soy crops or sugarcane, illegal logging and mining, massive road and dam infrastructure projects. Brazil is currently the fourth largest global emitter of CO2, with 75% of its greenhouse gas emissions stemming from deforestation. Deforestation has reached alarming proportions: 22% of the Amazon forest, 47% of the Cerrado in central Brazil, and 91.5% of the Atlantic forest that used to cover the entire length of the coastal area. While deforestation has been falling by 80% since 2005, it increased by 29% from 2013 to 2014, and satellite data shows that deforestation loss in March 2015 was 190% higher than it was in March 2014. One of the reasons is that the government has bowed to the powerful agribusiness lobbies' request to loosen the forest code. And also the government is struggling to control illegal logging. Brazil is also the largest beef exporter in the world, and demand for soy is also increasing. Nationally, beef consumption has risen considerably as more people have moved into the middle class. The government profits hugely from the export of beef. The profitability of converting the forest to pasture land pits the interests of very powerful ruralist lobbies against international pressure to curb deforestation. What are the consequences of this deforestation? There are dramatic changes in the rainfall patterns and distribution. Extreme weather events such as the drought and flash floods experienced in Sao Paulo. Food insecurity for indigenous tribes who rely on the rainfall patterns for food. If deforestation is not reduced, the temperature in the Amazon could increase by 2 to 3 degrees by 2050, which would lead to long and severe droughts, degradation of freshwater systems, decrease in yields, loss of biodiversity. 30 to 60% of rainforests would be converted into a type of dry savanna, the Amazon forest dieback, as it is known. And finally, there would be a displacement of the indigenous tribes. Here we can see a graph, a flow chart showing the Amazon dieback due to global warming and to decreased rainfall, which will eventually turn the Amazon into a savanna and increase emissions of CO2 and other greenhouse gases. Other consequences would be that the Amazon could become a net source of CO2 rather than a sink of CO2, as billions of tons of carbon stored in the trees and soil are released into the atmosphere, thus aggravating global warming. We would then surpass the 2-degree temperature rise limit. So what can be done? On an individual level, 80% of the beef produced is consumed domestically. One must educate consumers about the adverse effects of deforestation and encourage them to decrease their meat consumption. Also, encourage the people not to eat Amazon beef, meaning beef that comes from cattle grazing in the Amazon forest. One should educate people on the effects of climate change and global warming and teach them to lead a more sustainable lifestyle so as to decrease CO2 emissions. There should be a spread in rainforest education, and local communities should pressure businesses and the government to take action. On a national level, the government should prioritize the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions associated to deforestation, forest fires, and land degradation by the cattle and crop sectors, and establish strict legal frameworks and policies. They should promote the rehabilitation of the rainforest and end fire clearing by cutting incentives that are currently making forest burning more cost-effective by encouraging the reuse of already cleared land. They should reinstate and reinforce the forest code to protect the forests, grasslands, and other ecosystems such as the Cerrado. They should halt subsidies helping the beef industry, ensure that land degradation and forest loss is paid for by the agricultural industries, and put a price on major greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane. They should find alternative solutions for cattle and other crop producers so that GDP and employment is not affected while the forest is being protected. For this, there should be a dialogue between industries, government, local communities, and NGOs. They should boost job creation in other sectors such as reforestation and offer training programs for land management and conservation. And finally, they should support small farmers to avoid monocrops. On a global level, while shared risks are shared responsibilities, world leaders need to put the deforestation of the Amazon and its consequences on the forefront of their agendas, such as for COP21 in Paris in December. World leaders, together with the Brazilian government, need to act so as to avoid a global climate crisis. And big companies such as Nike, Adidas, car companies, and beef importers should be encouraged not to consume Amazon beef or rainforest leather.